So let's get started. Our general, do we need to go? I guess we need to do it like we normally do, right? Let's go around the room and introduce ourselves. Tyrone Nelson, Henrico County.
Bonnie Ashley, General Counsel.
Sharon Ebert, City of Richmond.
Helen Robertson, City of Richmond.
Mark Smith, Chesterfield.
Dave Anderson, Chesterfield. Terrell Hughes, Henrico County.
Tim Engel, Chesterfield County.
All right, point.
Janice Swift, Diana Clark, City of Richmond. Adrian Torres, GRTC.
Is that everyone? All right, thank you. Are there any public comments? All right, thank you. To approve, okay, so let me just make sure. Is this meeting to take the place of next Tuesday's meeting? Just say who.
Yes, good to see everybody. I'm David Schmidt with Henrico County. Good to see you.
Is there a motion to approve the? Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moving in second. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda. Title 6, Analysis of June 2025 Service Charges. Change order, additional traffic analysis for Western BRT. Change requests, ERP implementation, preparation support service, and then change order, ETI surveys and right-of-way. And I'm assuming all the appropriate staff are here. If anyone has any questions, anyone have any questions about the consent agenda? All right, seeing none. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda? One second.
Second.
All right, moved in second. All in favor, say aye. All right. Budget time, it seems like.
Mr. Chair,
Okay,
as I sent an email earlier
okay.
about one change to the agenda. Put a copy of everybody in front of
So is this something we need to vote on or just update?
Yeah, we actually need a vote, yes.
All right, well, can you present, Adrian? Because I think we just got this today, right?
Correct.
So do you mind going up and sharing what this is that we just got?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we have added an agenda item, January 2025, last January. You guys approved, well, actually, in the fall, you guys approved an MOU between the City of Richmond and GRTC for the public safety building to move forward as a selected site for future downtown transportation. That then went to council in January. We completed the study in May of that year, which selected that site. So this is just the next step related to that study. As we work with the city to move that over to the Economic Development Authority, we want to start the development of the RFQ for that particular site in order to get the support from the same consultants. So the change order amount is not to exceed $200,000.
Okay. Staff recommends that the Board of Directors authorize the CEO to submit a change order for not to exceed amount of $203 to continue to support GRTC development of a permanent downtown transfer hub. Anyone have any questions? Oh, okay. All right, we'll do that in 1 second, but yes, thank you. We do need to do that. Does anyone have any questions for Adrian before she sits down? All right, can I get a motion to add this action
So
item?
moved, Mr. Chair.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Now can we, get a motion to accept the recommendation? Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. All right, budget time.
Good afternoon again. We have created an updated presentation since the last time we've seen at the finance committee meeting, so I'm going to give high level overview, and then as Cheryl said, John and Cheryl, we are also in further details. So we highlighted just as the budget to kind of our focus area for FY26. FY25 was kind of all about expansion, focusing on that, moving things forward, and now it's more about let's focus on service reliability. Communicating about what we've expanded and our improved transit options, promoting transit access, understand that, sustaining zero fare, investing in essential transit infrastructure. So let's get all of those benches and shelters and charge things in. And then we have quite a few studies going to progress those as we collaborate with our partners, primarily looking at the GRT expansion. All right, so jumping into operating expenses. High level, so big thing as far as increases, this is looking at the CBU, for fixed route and DRT. Overall, I mentioned that we did expansion last year, however, we are actually doing a reduction in operators this year. So we went to 325 and we are actually reducing that down to 15. However, we are holding the FTE count at 325 with 10 of those being expended. And the logic behind that is that we always want to have, or at least usually project to have, a training class. So with that, those numbers will kind of work out where the budget is staying, but we'll always be ready to have it. We did increase part-time from 22 to 27. Total FTE is 328.5. However, of course, the total wages have increased roughly about $2 million, and that goes to bullet points. The operator salary increases effective to the CPA, going from the quarter one being 30% operator salaries. Then with the micro transit, we are staying neutral, even though we're in the zones, we are already projected that. At some point this year, we are doing them, I think, the last day of the year, kind of pushed out. So those will, what we projected in 25 will be realized in 6. And again, the main impact here is those salary increases in those also.
Adrian, is this what we?
Correct. As far as mechanics, we do have an increase there, just keeping out the flow of maintenance. So that is an increase of 6. That is the same. I will call it things that have changed. So again, it is an increase of 6, but salary increases, and again, these are all part of the. So total for the administration is 16 positions. You have the safety ambassadors, and we know that was the program that was approved last fall. Those are now attached to the budget. The capital project manager, that was a new position. We have quite a bit going on. We've had the planning manager. Lots and lots of outreach needs to be done, so we did add outreach course. Budgeted through some of the grant efforts as well. HR coordinator has been added, a payroll clerk, assistant facilities manager. As we put in all these benches, shelters, and crash stands, and the goal is 75% of 1,600 bus stops, this person will be dedicated to external, to be able to make sure that they are maintained, and manage that staff that we already have out there that we're previously now overall. We are increasing our fixed route DRT supervisors to 3, and then we have added from 1 additional micro. That service is also additional.
Question. We had talked about fundraising and where's that? Is that, where is that in there? Is there someone that we hired or somebody picked up additional, responsibilities that we already have?
So we had some here, we already had an advertising specialist. We hired her last year. She's probably a year now. She does that, but as far as development, specifically for transit access partnership with our transit fund, that is our kind of a group effort at this point. If we see a need to, we will address it. But Rachel's doing the advertising.
So it's a group effort,
From the marketing and communication,
and that's what you call TAP or whatever?
the transit access fund.
So we'll be able to see this year, like, real data around who we've been reaching out to, et cetera.
Right, and we have some of the, on July 8th, you guys should have all received an email this morning, inviting you to tap into Transit Day. This is at Main Street Station. We have a lot of regional partners, which is wonderful. For this event, we already have sponsors, $1,000 and event sponsors. That is the public launch of the TAP campaign. And so from there on out, we will do this annually, as well as we are tapping into all of our partners to push this campaign forward. We'll do that over the next time.
Okay.
All right, sorry, service miles and hours, so,
Does that mean that we're at like 29.5 more equivalent FTEs for the year?
16 total.
Well, you got 16 plus 6, right, for maintenance?
Yeah.
And then you're losing, I'm sorry, I picked that up wrong. It's 16 plus 6 is 22, less 7.5, so that's 13.5.
Yeah, the total proposed has, actually, 345.
345, so that says 10 down, but I picked up more than that in those numbers. For FTEs.
Got 7.5 reduction on FTEs. On the
7.5, you add 6, that's still 1.5 minus 16 would be 14.5, and this says 10. So I was just trying to figure it. Oh, the mechanics are in the next line. I'm sorry. I see it. All right. Yeah, that adds up. All right. And the total. All right. Thank you.
So service miles and hours is another way that we kind of look at our operating dollars. And you'll see in FY24, our actuals are roughly about 6.1 for miles, 540 roughly for the hours. We went up in FY25, and that is because of expansion, which is kind of on the next page. That's the budgeted amount. The reality was versus what was actually run came in a little bit less. And then for FY26, to follow the same logic, the reduction in operators goes with the reduction in service. So you see a slight reduction for FY26 miles and hours. So these are the routes that we expanded in FY25, and kind of stayed. I mean, some of those started halfway through the year, so you'll see a realization of full year of service in FY26 for those. And then some of them didn't start until October of this year. So in FY26. So the Route 1A, Chesterfield Town Center, is one of those services. Route 19 is Short Pump. That increased in frequency, so you used to be able to catch it every 30 minutes, now you can catch it every 15 minutes. The Route 1 went to Chamberlain and Wilmer, and now it goes all the way up to Virginia Center Commons. And then Route 7 at the airport now used to go every 60 minutes with the 7A and 7B. Now it's every 30 minutes, which gives you 15 minutes along 9 Mile Road, and then we have the micro. So all those went in FY25, and then I mentioned that there's a reduction from that net in FY26, and we are doing 2 service reductions in the city of Richmond, plus the Well Station. The poles will be reduced. It currently has 10-minute frequency at midday. That will be reduced to 15 minutes, which is still within the guidelines of it being a bigger peak. And the Route 5 currently has a frequency of 15 minutes all day, and Saturday we are reducing that frequency to every 30 minutes.
Is that throughout the week or just
Weekdays,
just on weekends.
no weekdays and weekends.
We've gotten a lot of complaints about that.
Which one, the Route 5?
Change.
Yeah, so Route 5, so the Carytown area goes all the way down Cary, financial district. It's around City Hall, and then it goes up to the Mosby area, which is great, but a lot of that serves VCU. And conversations with VCU no longer want to partner after July. So the reduction in that is because both of them are the poles of Route 5. As well as they have shared with us that they will be implementing their own service. And that service will actually be redundant of our Route 5 service, so assuming that their students will and their faculty will be using their service.
So the complaints that we're getting is from the Azalea area and the public housing community. Frequency of 30 minutes. That we bring it closer to the community, have some public hearings or whatever, because they really would like to see.
Okay.
I've gotten lots of.
Yeah, we could look at some alternatives and look at the costs. That serves more of that community. The changes, the Title VI was respective of the changes that will start at the very end of June. Those will happen, but we can look at changes for our next schedule. We'll look at the
Why
changes.
was it changed on this road? I mean, I hear what you're saying about VCU, but residents don't use VCU.
That was a big reason, because the funding for that went towards increase provided to them. We'll look at it, let us look at it, and we'll come back to the board. Sorry. So this is the summary slide that I mentioned before. So big drivers, operators, mechanics, decrease, increase, increase in terms of costs, pensions gone up, and then revenue loss has gone down, and revenue hours have.
So we cutting back on the FTEs for operators. Why? What was the reason again?
Because of these routes were 10 operators total.
And that's so staff made a decision to reduce the Route 5 and the post so that we can meet the budget number.
The budget number, yes,
What, Route 5 is what now?
it goes from Carytown down to Financial District, up 9 through the downtown area, and then goes up to most.
So you cutting that, how are we cutting that?
So it comes every 15, very, very frequent route. We're giving it every 30 minutes now. So it's not reduced in terms of where it goes. It doesn't come as often. Service is still there.
Did you say you good with that, Councilwoman?
No,
No,
I
no,
don't
no.
say that at all. That's service some of the lowest income residents that we have in the city that don't have any other options. I'm not getting complaints from Carytown, of course, but, complaints are coming from the folks that don't have 30 minutes to wait for a bus and then try to make the connections to get to critical places that folks have to get to. We are increasing routes on increasing frequency on other routes. Which routes are we increasing frequency?
Nothing's being increased.
After this fiscal year.
I mean, let me say it that way. Do you have any other routes that the frequency is going from 30 to 15.
No, we're only doing those two changes.
Do you have any routes that increase the?
Last year,
Last year,
the
though.
ones on top, all those increased. Wait, what we could do, sorry, not straight to detail, but we could, look at doing some trippers. That's a possibility. We can look at the budget for that when the need is out there. That means it wouldn't be selected by an operator necessarily as part of their regular schedule, but if they will still get someone to run some extra trips, then the frequency could return, but we wouldn't do it all day. It may not be a need all day.
Public hearing in the neighborhoods that are.
Yeah.
To measure the impact as a result. Two locations that I've got. Azalea, that a lot of folks are coming in and taking that route.
Yeah.
To get into the city. And then where the residents are.
We had one public meeting, I think it was last Monday, sorry. Monday. But we can do them first.
Another question. So is this route reduction, so these cuts are all in relation to the things that we asked when we sent over the email about cut this, cut that, cut this, whatever. Was this cut already in the first budget that you?
Yeah, this has been here. We presented the changes last month for the service changes to the board.
And so the pulse is just because the ridership is lower or something?
So the pulse was designed to always be 15 minutes at midday. In the contract with VCU, they agreed to pay for an increase of 10 minutes at about $300,000. That contract no longer will exist after July. We have been kind of subsidizing that with our budget anyway, so they're going to be putting their own service in, and we are getting articulated vehicles. The main reason for the increase, I think, our non-pulse, non-VCU, is that our buses hit capacity, but we're putting 60-foot vehicles in that will then complement or compensate for the less service. But there will still be 10 minutes at peak, so which means from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. you'll still have 10 minutes.
I missed the whole VCU is running its own. What did you say? They're doing what now? I missed that piece.
You're right.
Yeah, in the conversations that we had with them, that they were going to utilize their current contract to put in their, I guess, it's shuttle service.
So the cost difference of keeping this at 15, what are we talking?
What was last year's cut in half? Someone could pull that. Can I get it to your presentation?
Maybe a slide that.
Operating expense drivers, who are here, I'm just gonna hit kind of the highlights. You know, human capital is one of the main drivers as far as that. This shows in column one, kind of our baseline and FY20 actual. We noted that with the look at here. FY24 actual for comparison, and FY25 and then FY26. Besides human capital, we have our state of good repair, which is primarily maintenance related. And then specialized transportation has jumped quite a bit. It was 9.5 the last version that you guys saw. It's now. And other increases, sorry, you didn't have to go. I didn't do the next slide. Talk about it in the next slide. Other three big ones that I mentioned is the safety program is brand new as of fall. Safety ambassadors. So the first one is security. The second one is the ambassadors. These are so the overall increase here, 59 million, 66 million, and then the base operating is 90.3 to 108. I do want to highlight this is covered again. Don't go to the next slide, but in the next slide. That the base is actually 94 for kind of a different comparison. This includes all the studies, which I will be pulled out to show what the actual apples to apples comparison is.
So question, going back to Councilwoman Robertson's request. You don't have anybody now that can get her the number because, oh, okay, all right.
Okay.
Because if she wants a public hearing and wants a number, then we're not gonna be able to vote on this budget today. Which no press, I mean, you know, that's what we need to be doing. That's what we need to do, but I was just gonna say, is there another staff person who can get the number, but you.
Yeah, well, John put the two together, I'm gonna round it up for roughly $1 million in terms of operators, as a comparison. So the whole staying at 15, the 5 being the biggest piece of that. I'm probably somewhere around.
You hear that, Councilwoman? How do you feel about it?
Did I hear say that they're gonna add $1 million to, for one route to go to the 15? Is that what I heard?
To stay at
That is the same, that was, I guess, the reduction in operating costs related to the 2 routes being,
You say the
Together.
no, together.
Together. Equal?
No. It was about 700 probably for the 5. That was for the operators, that doesn't include
Just the operator,
Right.
the fully loaded operator is roughly about $90,000 a head. So if it's 10 heads reduction, there's 900,000 there. Then you're going to have, you know, the cost of maintenance on those vehicles and fuel. So it's going to be north of that. But that's the base human capital cost of the 10.
We ran it at 15 this year. We're running at 15 right now. So where those 10 operators go? Are there new routes they went to?
No, that we eliminated the 10 from 3.
That's it? That's where the 10 is from?
So this is an estimate, it's about 3.5 million for the 5 normal, like the normal ones, so about that probably.
But that was all part of the budget as it was presented before we asked for changes. That was,
Correct, yeah, correct, that's been it since probably March.
But we have that as we have this as a discussion point at the end. So I'm gonna just let you go through the budget, but I think this is a tick question. I mean, this is a question that we need to deal with, so.
Okay, so this gives you just the trend from FY23 to FY26. This does highlight the changes that we did do in terms of the operating expenses. We got kind of some direction. We did go back and kind of tighten up a few things, and some of the projections. The first one related to operations. We had a decrease of 500,000 for paratransit. It had jumped to about 9.5 million from 7.4. And then as far as maintenance related to parts, we had a decrease of 1.5. And this just reflects the same thing. So overall decrease change of 2 million for the overall base budget. We did make it so you could see the base budget compared to what was the originally the one-way continued to show throughout, which included a lot of studies. So you see the 84 from the FY25 base, and so the total after those $2 million of reduction. And this shows, again, like I said, the difference between the 108 and the 94, the 12 million for the studies being 9.5. The security officers are currently covered under a grant match from the state, and then these are all of our IT also matched. So total of 12 million compared to FY25. That base we also add on to 6.3, which gives you the 1 plus the 6 was why we had $90.3 million budget in FY25. Grown in terms of the study efforts have grown as we progressed with our 2 GRT studies.
With these grants, for instance, officers, will you be able to just keep applying for grants to fund that down the road? Or-
In terms of, so that's a trip grant.
So it is it like operating where you wean yourself?
Yeah. I'll find the money.
We're just trying to figure out where a hole's gonna come later, that's.
Yeah, so these are studies, but these would be reoccurring, and we always apply for these.
Pretty much reoccurring, or they're gonna go away. The, not 914 for security officers and the 1.6 for, state and fed IT contracts, those are gonna be recurring. That
And they have always been recurring. So these are our normal reoccurring that we get.
So that's recurring.
Right.
So the only thing that may not be recurring is the security.
The studies will progress in terms of the funding, like this includes 30% design for some of them, so they will be higher as we progress to like 100% designs for some of the projects. So you might see a higher number later, but they will eventually go away when the engineering is done.
I will show the detail of those studies.
It shows what the names of specific projects. Goes to the total of the 9.4 for the studies. Those are states, and then we get into kind of our matching through our 5307 and 5339 buses, to leverage to alleviate any of the local need. We do use some federal dollars. So that's the local match. We did, I'll get into it later, we did kind of change revenue. Just some highlights, just to repeat that we are projecting to accrue by, I guess, the end of June, 33.9 million based on the VDOT projections of FY25 for CBTA. Again, that's us using FY25 to do operations. 6. Maintenance of service being the largest amount of that at 28.6. The 250 that we just talked about in that approval for next steps for the transfer station, that is the match for a study that the city is doing. We have 1.7 million for local match for capital. That is in 2 because we did change it so that the match. Yay, local. So it leaves a net of 3.3. Here.
Sorry, you said the 1.7 is CBTA local or
Sorry, it's local match, but we're using CTA GRTC 15%. The DRTP net operating expenses, we did see a decline in this from our expectations, knowing that as operating dollars increase and you're doing well, that you should reach 30% match. We were almost there in 25, and we're pretty much there from 23 to 25. What was shared with us on the call is that obviously we recovered too fast in terms of our performance, and everyone else stayed low, but now others are now recovering. So it is based on the percent difference between the increase of what the state average is versus what we have. So as they increase, it pulled funds away from us, but also the pot was just a little bit smaller. So it did have an impact. I'll go ahead and say that it should plateau. It's just my projection of how I think they did not anticipate this when they developed the formula many years ago, that there would be a drop and then a spike. And it should stabilize, but they are reviewing the way the formula was done, so to probably protect from this in the future. I think that's happening this year. I think the CISDAT group is meeting. So we did see a decrease from what we expected And then COVID relief funds, we have shared that they expire in 2027, that is ARPA. We had done kind of a projection of spending them in 26 and 27, however, we have changed the way that we've drawn down those funds and have used them 25 and 26 in anticipation of federal impact. So 5307, kind of jumping here, so the total amount for FY26 that we have is 14.9 million. And to note that there are certain requirements for being able to have eligible expenses into preventive maintenance for this. So that is why we have 14.9, and then the ADA, you are capped at 10% of awards. And I know there has been that one of the directions we had kind of seen us a little bit into this, so just wanted to explain why we're kind of set off in the years that we are looking at this. So the transit asset management plan document that was board through 2022, we have to redo it for FDA requirements every 5 years for them to look at what are kind of against our formula funds for the federal government, because those funds are driven, and what our state of good repair needs are. Working with all different departments, they update our asset list. And you'll see here, this is primarily vehicles, and I would say primarily pulse driven, because we have to buy out those vehicles as an expansion need. And so they're from 2016, useful life of 12 years. So at 2028, they're all due. Now we don't have to buy them all at the same time. And we use these funds, as I showed on the other side, like the capital matches. They help us not have to use as many local dollars. So we use these for matches for all of our capital needs. And we try to project when we will need them. And if you go to the next slide, John, that was just state of good repair. So this is a little bit further into, we have to also do a 5-year as well, which is due for GRTC, a 10-year. That year 28 kind of still pops up, but this is not just state of good repair related to the vehicles and the other needs, but what are our capital needs related to our expansion projects. So the transfer station, the BRT projects, those funds could be used as matches as we progress on those projects. It captures all those together. And I think it's not showing very well because I realize it doesn't start at 0, it starts there.
Okay, can you back up? I'm just trying to catch up. I feel like you just gained momentum and I'm like, what? So the first slide on operating revenue assumptions.
Go back.
So this is how you plan to use these funds. That's
So
what
this is
you're
our
saying.
full, this is our need. So this is our full asset inventory and their useful life and when they would be eligible to be replaced.
Okay, so we adopted this asset management plan and you kind of, you know when things need to turn over. And
So correlation, this is, that's total dollars. So the federal funding is usually 28%. So 28% of that spike there is roughly 26 million roughly in 28, so that would be 7.5 million. So you put it in context a couple of slides, you'll see is our annual award after the split with Petersburg is probably around $14 million. So in that point, if we spent all that on rolling stock in there, we would use about half of our 5307. Or for EM and ADA, there's less to spend on capital.
And then we use it for all the matches that we get for what we had $43 million in grants this year in order to alleviate the local need, because you always have to have, it's 80, 20%. We are allowed to use federal government, which is operating dollars because it counts as the local match. You can use the federal dollars.
So, operating revenue assumptions, I'm looking at this chart where you've got a dollar amount for 21.
Next slide. Keep going.
And so this one. So, these are federal funds, and are you saying what year they're actually, and the difference
Yeah, John.
So down here, this is the fiscal year appropriation. So one's appropriation, we have 9.885 million. Going through, as you recall from the previous slide for PM, we budgeted 11.9 million, 1.44 million for ADA. So out of that 9,885,000, we're going to use 6 million of that. We're going to use 4.84 of that. We're going to use 7 for getting our PM line. ADA will be using this. This blue line here, this is our fiscal 2025 approved capital plan. This is the 28%. That will fill in against these 21 and 22 awards. 2026 proposed capital plan, the federal share is 12 million. That will come off of appropriation to move forward towards our fiscal, our big spike that you saw. So this is how it fishes that there, dovetails out. The other question that came up, this 25 appropriation that we just received in April. So this is the first year that GRTC is an eligible table for him. That's what the was citing. So this is the first year from the NTD that we went below 100 vehicles. So that's what allows you to take that and be eligible for 3A. GRTC in these appropriations never had that ability. So the only ability that GRTC has in our fiscal 24 and prior awards is PM Flex, which comes with, which is a reimbursement. We can't reimburse more than the expenses that we have for labor, parts, fuel, and other eligible PM expenses. So after this budget that we're contemplating, a pool of about 32.6 million of 5307 funds that have been appropriated that are set for the 27 and 28 capital plans. That's on that chart, that big spike that we showed prior.
I will note that these are formula funds, and we do give a portion, sure, letter Petersburg, but it does potentially change. We've been following that. We know that when the infrastructure bill came out, was it 4 years ago, that we did see a 30% increase, which was very nice. And that has actually stayed stable, but we don't know if that will change.
The access years across the top are the lapse years that if you don't program that federal fiscal year, which ends September 30th, these are those periods.
Okay,
So
so
Ms. Carter, you're asking me, you're saying something about the years that we're using, actually the appropriate.
Good. And so what you're seeing on the left explains the 21 money, yeah, 22. So those are all funds at the Fed level, and if it says 2025, then fiscal year 2025 Fed year, we can spend that money. So while this program is in 2030, there's nothing precluding that it's programmed in 2026.
So to answer that question, program versus unprogrammed, you have to program sequentially. So in the prior years, prior to me arriving here, we had a pool of 19, 20 that we have gone through with projects. Some of these timelines of the large expansion have expanded, so the utilization did not occur. So we're programming as we go, but you have to program sequentially. So we're going to be finishing the balance of 22's appropriation 23 as we move forward. We can't jump to 25.
And I feel like the main point is we are using those funds. It's not like we have 30-year-old funds that are showing on here. So we don't want to spend the 25 prior to the 21, 22, 23 if we need all of them ever at some point anyway, especially all the capital needs that we have in the future. And so all that I'm saying in that, and so with that, what they're saying too is it gives you more time, 8 years if you program it. If you leave it unprogrammed, then once you program it, it starts to give you 5 years that you have to spend it. So that's understandable. But the question would be, what other localities or transit agencies, what fiscal year are they using currently right now? I know PAT, they're currently using FY25 federal dollars. So it's not typical for agencies to have 5 years of unprogrammed dollars unprogrammed. And so there is still nothing, they're all in reimbursement dollar amounts based on what you spend on your maintenance. And then again, that automatically takes away from those dollars being capital. And you convert it over to those operating well, kind of like operating use in this revenue. So again, the question becomes, I guess, could the board be privy to know what peer transit agencies, literally like how they are utilizing theirs and what fiscal year they are on? Because again, it's not typical that an agency has this many years. Just from an example at Newbury Transit, coming into there, they had a facility that needed to get fixed. And so 3 years of unprogrammed money, I programmed immediately and then worked towards it. So I think if we have goals and visions to look at it, I think this is one approach, and there could be other approaches to help us better leverage the.
I want to, I guess, respond to that. We can do.
Let me just say this, Councilwoman Robertson asked, that wanted to ask a question. So, I mean, we all understand she's not on board, but the councilwoman asked her to ask a question. So staff, I don't want you to think that we're trying to, you know, the councilwoman has staff here from the city, so she asked her to ask a question. So
I would say that GRPT is extremely generous in their awards and opportunities, and GRTC, I would say, has been taking advantage as far as the opportunities that are out there. I'm not very familiar with Petersburg, but I do know that we have just given them some. So with that, I think we have been able to not have to draw down as much on the federal need because we have been able to match a lot of our projects and are operating with the benefit of the DRPT providing us the opportunity, which I think is different than a lot of other transit agencies, and probably the state of Virginia might be more supportive.
So I guess the question that, for my clarification, Mr. Chair, and thank you for allowing us to ask questions. Otherwise, I would. What I'm left with is the sense that we have dollars that have not been, cumulative dollars that have not been programmed. Is that?
50 million. 71 is a combination of programmed and unprogrammed. Unprogrammed is 50 million. So those are in the process of being programmed. So the ones that, as you can see, this is completely programmed.
I guess the question for the clarity for me and the board, I hope, is that we kind of have a closer eye on what that is, because as we look at other sources of funding that we're using for that, we could be using this money for programming. I mean, especially when we are looking at asking some of our local, like we were asked for an additional $1.5 million. I know that that's been taken care of that. But I'm wanting to make sure that, for my clarification, what these funds can be, why we won't use what we may already have in hand versus asking jurisdiction for additional revenues and so forth. You know, there's some major, you know, just like what I just mentioned about the, you know, Route 5.
Go back.
And I'm not suggesting that.
Go back a slide.
Yeah.
Or yeah,
Keep going through.
I understand we can't.
One more
so
slide, John, one more back.
That's the reason why I'm saying.
They have to be
because you
eligible.
have several different sources of money.
So
Some things you can use or you can't.
finish your thought before you start answering. Go ahead, Councilwoman, what's up?
Well, I appreciate that, because I was kind of not sure who was talking at the time. So what I'm asking is for us to have line item budget reports by funds with some clarity. I'm trying to make that determination whether you can move funds from one. I trust that you all know exactly what that is, but I want to make sure that we've got $50 million out there for programming that we're maximizing our use without it being an additional cost to the media. That's it.
So in this proposed fiscal 26 budget, these are the actual budgeted expenses for the categories that are PM eligible. So 80% of those is the 11.9. So we've got that programmed in against the 5307. this, sorry, the 5307 for the ADA, that's basically, that's capped at 10% award. So I kind of used the 5-year rolling average of our net 5307 award. Part of it goes to Petersburg. So ours is around 14 million. So this is for funding of ADA. So this is our paratransit. So this is about a month and 3 weeks of paratransit funding. So John, go back to that other slide. One more. One more. So here's the 11. So this is the PM. And that's the ADA cost of the paratransit that was on that slide. So out of this 9, there's 6 in 1. So that, and then this is already earmarked from the 25 approved capital plan. 4.88, it's unprogrammed, which is in the process of being programmed. Out of that 15 from the 22 will go towards 4.8 of the 11.9. The remaining 10 of that being programmed is for our 25 capital plan. So that will exhaust our 22 appropriation and our 26 appropriation. We're picking up the last piece of the PM that's budgeted there, as well as the last piece of the ADA. And this is our entirety of the federal 28% match of the federal capital program. So it leaves balance of 2.75 million from the 23 appropriation. We have the 24 appropriation, which is earmarked for, if you follow this logic, 13.5 million of that's going to be for the 27's PM and ADA. So that will pretty much exhaust that. And then the balance will be between the 25 and that would be for the 27 capital plan.
But we still have 50.8.
Yeah, so this is the 4.8 is unprogrammed. That's in the process of being programmed. This entirety of the 16 million. Yes,
Speaking to.
correct. Yes, you're absolutely correct.
And that is restricted from operating use, is that what I heard?
You can use the operating piece to the extent of PM and ADA. So figure about 13.5 million a year. That's what we have reimbursable expenses.
Maximum.
In the prior years when we had surplus and we had expenses that were lower due to vacancies, we didn't utilize the PM expenditures for them.
This is not, and is this the way we presented the budget every year? Like, is
There's an assumption, yes, in there. It may not, this is more detailed because when the question arose, I went through and did this to kind of demonstrate how we do it. But in the prior year budgets, there was always 5307 flex for PM and ADA. Those were line items, but it didn't show the clarity as to what of the appropriation award did they come from. And we have always had, obviously, the capital plan in the back of the book. You would always see the allocation between federal, state, and the local piece. This is the federal piece. 13. If you go in the last year's budget book, you'll see the federal piece for 13.5. If you go into this year's budget book for capital, you'll see the federal share of 12 million. That's where that all falls in. That's just the 28%.
Yeah, 50 million. So I'm just trying to make it simplistic in my head, and I guess. So we have 50 million that's unprogrammed. The majority of it is unprogrammed. It can only be used for specific purposes.
I was kind of toying with, I use this phrase, used and proposed use. I didn't want to use earmarked. I didn't want to use encumbered or whatever. But this is, as we go through our plans of balancing everything for capital with capital plans and all the other studies that we're doing, this is how we're allocating the available capital money to what the sources are.
So how much of the unprogrammed can be used? And this is fiscal year 26, right?
Yes.
How much of the unprogrammed could be used for fiscal year of the unprogrammed if we needed it for fiscal year 26?
So this is our maximum of operating that we can do for the
What's that? 13?
two of them, it's around 13.5 million. So this is basically all the six of the 11 is programmed. 4.88 million is in the process of being programmed, and that 1,077,000 portion. So basically,
So we have nothing pretty much of unprogrammed.
yeah. So it's being programmed for the capital purposes. So when we look at this, the question is, when you look at the 2025 approved capital plan amounts, those grants for the federal level have not been programmed yet. So that 28% of everything we've done is a receivable to me from the government. I'm floating to government. So when we program that, then I can submit the reimbursement. So it's cash flow negative right now.
So this is really dumb, but unprogrammed doesn't seem like it's really unprogrammed. Because you keep saying it's in the process of being
It's unprogrammed from the respect of the FTA. So there's not an executed grant contract for us. That's why I was toying with this. For us, this is our intended use. Or if we were sitting there as the board has approved different budgets, these are the components of the budget to where they are going to be funded from.
I think your header, grant status, makes it more clear. Now that I've zeroed in on that, grant status.
I was toying, I mean, I was spitballing for.
Councilwoman Robinson, did you get your question answered?
So it's sort of like grant status, whether you have an
With-
executed contract.
With the FDA. This
Or
is the
not.
grant status with the FDA.
Correct.
You have an executed agreement or you don't.
This is, on our board, we call Dan Smith the finance guy. He's very smart. I'm not the finance guy. And this is confusing the hell out of me, honestly. I'm not gonna lie. It really is. I'm not even really sure what I'm looking at, but like a certain level of trust that we have to have. Then if we don't feel the trust, then that's why we get here asking 1,000 questions. So it doesn't mean that we're not smart. It just means that we're not clear. There's a difference between the two things. So I just want to make sure I say that.
It took 3 heads to put this together.
Trying to make it clearer is what
I don't know. That's why I said.
I know.
Yeah,
And I guess.
I don't remember the
because
GRTC
before
budget
we
being like this,
could
but-
Understand it more, but we were trying to figure out a way to explain it that simpler.
They have every year told us what the 5307 program money was, but we've never,
Seems like there's
we never
things going
dove
on.
all the way down
all on
into
one
it and
page.
what year it was originally programmed.
One more.
Mr. Chair,
No.
watching if I get my question answered, probably.
Forward revenue, going to revenue.
Know that I know, but I will continue to explore
Hold
that.
on, pause for a second.
And I will continue to perhaps look at ways of recommendation to the board as to how we can do the reporting in a way that we can follow it and fully understand. Because this is difficult for me to understand. I'm programming 50 million, but then know that it is programmed,
It's
it just
programmed.
hasn't been executed.
Allocated
Right.
yet, which is really programmed.
Right.
But
And if it is, then it should, in my opinion, it should show it as program, but for whatever year, it will be expedited.
In process of programming.
Something clearer than what it is right
But-
now. And I don't know that, Mr. Chair, that I need to try to belabor my clarity of understanding. I think this is something that the county needs to look at a different reporting process that we can all be sure that we're clear on. That would be acceptable to the board.
Here in this familiarity of the total roll-up of the operating contributions, FDA 5307 flex, this is the operating portions of those. So if you took the 11.9 for the PM and then the 1.44 for the ADA, that's your 13.4, and you can see in the prior years what the use and adoption was. The actual use and what was adopted.
What's the reason for increasing from 5 million to 13?
We're maxing out. So the issue, we go back to the PM, is the auto parts has a Buy American clause, so as does the tires. So definitively, we know that the tires and tubes is a Buy America certified contract, and we get to see it from the Department of Utilities, so that's exempt from that. Purchase the gasoline and diesel under a contract that's federally compliant with Buy America. However, we buy Gillig buses, we buy New Flyer buses. They certify that those buses, when we buy the buses, are to the Buy America Act, but the parts contracts with Gillig, they don't certify that the parts are Buy America. So that $5 million is parts. They do not certify, so we're in the process of jointly working with procurement to go back out to them to get them to bid the contract to sourcing the part, US, ex-US, so that we can basically submit the part expenses to be PM eligible. So the reason it was lower in the prior year is that we didn't include the parts in there. This year we have. That's one of the reasons why. So we have an initiative right now going out to suppliers to basically make sure that we can buy the parts under a Buy American eligible contract.
Okay, so the increase is due to including parts in 26 that meet Buy America.
Yeah, the other thing that happens is the net amount when we saw the drivers is that the cost of the parts went up. Two things as we're preparing this is that we're getting new types of buses. We also have electronic vehicles, batteries. So when maintenance first came out, they were asking for a $3 million increase in parts. Part of that was new types of parts. Second part of it is we had the uncertainties below what was going on with tariffs. So if we don't have majority of 70% of the parts bought in US, there's a potential for tariff. So now that the tariff stuff seems to be quieted down a little bit, we felt like between the initiative that we're working on procurement and identifying US versus ex-US and the tariffs, we lowered the part number down a little, which has ramifications on the amount of PM trucks we can use as well.
Can you go back to the, yeah,
Restart back to where you were at.
sure. Go back. Okay, no, fine. Let's go. Let's keep going. All right, one more. Go back. Okay, so jumping on to operating revenue assumptions, this is the zero fare. We did make a change to this based on some direction. We had originally had the version you saw on the finance committee, 1.5 million from the city of Richmond for the zero fare. We have increased the which we also retitled just so you know. So that is the appropriation of prior year surplus or earned interest. It's not money that is taken out of our reserve. But we have increased that to 4.1 million. In conversations and recommendations from the finance committee was to roll what was advertising into that number as well. That would have reflected a 4.7 million. I have down here where you can see our advertising specialist has been working over the last quarter to bring in quite a few agencies or businesses. So as of right now, I think it's actually higher than that. She closed another one as of the end of last week, but we are a little above 500,000. So we separated back out the 600,000 for community partners advertising with the direction that we do not want to project what we don't have, but we can put in what is already earned. That is what has already been earned from community partners as of basically right now. And then we did get approval working through the grant that went through RideFinders for CMAQ, because that was kind of a tentative, that did get approved by the RRTPO for 2 million for the mode shift related to congestion mitigation for air quality. So that brings you to 6.8, and we just have these for reference because we had these listed and we had it listed as GRTC. We just wanted to show as far as the available funds, the 508,000 again from community partners / advertising. We are looking right now for FY25 a projected surplus of 9.4 million. And then as far as what we have earned in interest for CBTA overall from the initial year, we have about 4.3 million from related to that. And there are also investments, John's correct, related to these through LGIP that are not listed on here that also go towards that. So as far as, I think there was also a question about the 1.5 potentially being used for the 5307 or for operating with these revenue sources being an addition or surplus as far as current interest to go towards that.
Safe to assume the 21, 22, 23, and 24 surpluses are already in reserve somewhere?
The only one that is in the contingency that's been approved.
In the May 22 board meeting, we
That's gone.
Yes, that's in there. These, based upon, these are sitting in balance. So what we're going to do is, as we have these, I can bring to the finance committee with the detail of showing each of the calculations from the financials when we lose 25. We can move basically the remaining 17 million, whatever it is, into that reserve. So the money that's sitting in unrestricted fund balance. So the unrestricted fund balance is invested in LGIP the same way as that if it has the same type of investment that the existing 5.77.
So we remove the city 1.5 ask and utilize surplus, prior surplus and interest to replace the 1.5. And use that surplus instead of pulling out reserve, just use that recent surplus.
So remember at the board meeting, we made the comment and we were talking about the federal year to date in fiscal 25. Reason for that is that if we looked at our 10-year model, as Adrian had said, in fiscal 26, we contemplated in using that 10-year model, 10.3 million of ARPA. So with the uncertainty with the administration change, the board remembers that they were possibly clawback programmed unused COVID funds. So we started appropriating or utilizing the ARPA reimbursement for the paratransit funds, which are eligible. So that's creating the use of the ARPA money is creating in 25 is creating surplus. So using this basically gets you to the same point in your plan, but we're supposed to be ARPA line.
So in a future finance committee, a nearby future one, you're probably going to come to us for that 17 million to throw it in reserve or not.
Yes, sir.
And it's unrestricted.
It's
You can use it for whatever you want.
Correct,
It's surplus.
but there is, you also have on in August of 22, correct, yes, sir.
So if the board and the
And
finance
then-
committee decide to make a recommendation to the board to not put 17 million, I'm making a number up, away, put 16.5 away and move 5 into a budget amendment to maintain 15-minute frequency on a line, that's doable.
Yes, sir. So would
Much better than the reserve move.
yeah, and
I don't know if it's the same thing or not, just worded differently, but it's much.
and then
much
the
cleaner.
power, to put in resides with the power of the board through the finance committee. There's in the August of 2022 minutes, the policy that was adopted. There's, if there's like a 60-day temporary cash flow, it can be authorized by the CEO, but to expend for items such as you said, it comes back to the board for use.
Colleagues, and Mr. Chair, if I may, from my perspective, that is way easier for me, and Jim, we've had this conversation a million times, that's way easier for me to understand, to Ms. Robertson's point. Pulling from reserve to fund a budget has a whole different meaning to me, and if I understood it improperly, that's my fault. But pulling from reserve to fund a budget is different than utilizing recent surplus, shaving off some of the recent surplus to fund operational issues and putting the rest in reserve, to me, has two separate meanings, and water flows in different ways in that regard. That is flowing surplus into reserve, peeling off some to pay for priorities, rather than pulling out of reserve, which to me has a detrimental impact mentally. So that clears up a ton for me.
Can I ask a question? Why ask Richmond for $1 million? You have surplus. Like, what was the rationale behind that? I'm just curious.
To be in compliance with the.
But it does require,
It required a match from a locality?
Yeah. So we, for the 3 years of the TRIP grant, we basically funded it out of the surplus to do it. That in the current year, we were running favorable, so we didn't have to ask it. So we ended up being, as you can see, we ended up being net favorable in those years that it ran.
And we can't, just to be clear, we can't count their $9 million of maintenance of effort as part of the match. That doesn't count towards that. You know what I'm asking? Did I say it correctly? They pay $9+ million a year in maintenance of effort. That doesn't count?
It would come out of, you could say it comes out of there, but then you start going to the local matches on the capital and the operating, all comes out the same portion.
Gotcha.
The only, Richmond has from the 2020 appropriation, there is a portion of the 2020 appropriation that was for capital. We steer that into capital. It's $200,000. But the other municipalities are just operating contribution.
I'm looking for an amendment to this budget to take care of RideFinders.
So are you guys finished with the presentation?
Keep going. This just highlights all the changes we made from the last time that you saw.
That's the project piece. Go back one.
Okay,
Sure,
back.
I got it.
Sorry, yeah, this highlights all the changes that we saw. So we changed the 3% that was in some of the budgets and changed it to 2.8%, so the CPW, yeah.
But small but fair.
Remove the zero fare support, remove the advertising and, zero fare. I mentioned we cut the fee of repair, and adjusted the 425. Just the advertising, and then this is the interest income adjustment to go towards the balance.
In essence, the flex cut, that was, we cut $1.5 million in parts. This here, the adjustment downward there for the reverse, that's you looking at what the rate would be for the GRTC reimbursement. Previous version, we were too high.
Okay, that was for that.
So it's just realigning it, and up there where it says we moved advertising came down. So it came out of there, so this was actually adding the money back.
But that's that less than 2 million.
So
Go to the next one.
these are just
Go to the next one, John. Keep going. All right, so this just shows the highlight again of our capital and how we're matching those with the 2 million on the slide, so 43 million for total. Keep going. So just want to show this as far as alignment, because you guys have all seen this 10-year projection, just showing that this number is not off. This was done, you've seen it before several times. This is outdated from the strategic plan, but you'll see 96 million was the number that was in the 10-year, and this budget actually hits spot on as far as the projections that we've already from previous years. For that, and we will continue to update this as things shift. But the out years, again, are those big projects coming in as far as station. Next slide. All right, so just next steps. Stage this adoption of the budget, which is in progress. There were, I guess, quite a few concerns, and we talked about this before after the board retreat, finance, as well as the development committee about the current allocation of how things work out, what should happen with the expansion as grants do run out. So just a recommendation, take those on in both of those committees. We are recommending a board retreat for September to get it done with all that effort. And then moving everything up so that we're not trying to scramble in March, but October doing, having everything ready for budget requests to jurisdictions, and then having the draft budget to you guys in December.
I hate to go backwards, but I do have one question. It looks like you have 600,000 in for business partnerships, which is advertising, but you do show 509,000 of it. So you've now shown us that you have the ability to do that. So I'm comfortable with 600, but I wasn't comfortable with what we were showing. And if you show, you know, let's just say you hit 800,000 this year, and next year you say we're going to get to 9, then I might believe that, but you can't go from 0 to 5 million at one time. You got to show us that you can get there. And I've made the statement I wasn't comfortable before. I'm comfortable with this. That's why I'm making the statement, because you show me how you get that. Show me your work, and I can.
I do have the answer to Bart's question about the security officers. It is eligible for renewal. Okay.
All right, colleagues, you've heard an extensive explanation or presentation, not explanation, presentation What's your pleasure? Well, first of all, before I go there, do we have any more questions? Yeah,
Amendment to the budget.
so we're gonna do the amendment. That'll lead into the motion. All right, so let's just get all the questions out first. Yes.
Question with regard to the grant money that is being used for, and I don't know what it's called, the West End Transfer Station, is that Parham and Broad? Is that what you're calling it? There's Western BRT studies, there's Western Pulse studies, and then there's Western Transfer Station study. Is that the one, Western Transfer Station study? Is that the land that Henrico purchased on the corner of Parham and Broad? Are those grants, applications, and monies applicable to the study itself or the property itself? There's a potential that property is not going to work. Not going to work. That property is there. So my question is, does it slow you down? Is the application mirrored to an address or a project?
The project.
It's a project, okay. So you can safely move forward with what it is you're doing for application for the plan. But before you get too far, please contact Terrell, because I'm not sure that the property itself, that island on Parham and Broad, is going to work. Pedestrian safety issues on this island in the middle of combined 10 lanes of traffic.
It's not gonna work.
It's not going to work. I'm trying to be polite. We will have to work with you independently to find another location. We have several options, but that particular location is not going to work.
Not enough parking.
Just no. Somebody's going to get killed trying to park their car across the street, trying to get to a bus. So my question is, the county can unwind that property, but we want to do it in consultation with you all. And I don't want you to have to run down a road with applications or promises, knowing that that specific address is not going to be feasible.
So the planning that they're doing for that particular site?
That's what I'm asking. I don't think we got to site planning yet. I don't think we're anywhere near a site design.
Grant is for the project, and it was originally thought that the project would go there. It's not. So Dan's question is, can you still move the grant to another site without starting the process over, or is it tied to that address?
That's exactly my question, yeah. The project.
Yeah, I think we would probably hold the funds because they are for conceptual design and engineering work. And so you would set to do that. We do have other funds that we are working on getting that actually could support site research if needed. That's
Yeah, I think, I'm sure I don't want to speak for, I think the county will support and help with the identification of the site. I just want to make sure you can keep moving with what you're doing with regard to grant applications and collection and holding, but I would slow any roll down on developing that particular address pin because we have significant concerns about its feasibility.
All right, thank you.
Is that right? All right.
Any other questions about the budget? All right, yes, ma'am. You have an amendment that you want to make to the budget. So I would assume that you can make a motion, attach your amendment, and we can vote on that, right?
We could.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, unless,
So I have a
okay,
motion to amend.
right, so let's have some discussion about the amendment so that we don't have to fight about the amendment. So tell us what your amendment is and let's make sure we all on
So
board.
I guess the question I need to know for the amendment is, I need to say the specific amount that only the staff can tell us what the operational cost is going to be associated with that. So I can make an amendment to cover the operational cost to keep the Route 5 at 15 minutes frequency.
So I wonder if you say that and then add in that the funds will come from,
And the funds will come from.
2025 surplus.
so that way you won't have to say a number
Right.
per se.
Okay, cool.
Oh, so are you guys okay with that? All right, well, go for it. Make the motion. No, you got to say it again.
They have to be.
All right, motion to amend.
No, you want to make a motion for us to accept the budget with the amendment. Okay,
Okay,
Yes.
motion to accept the budget with the amendment as was just previously stated.
Second.
And you can give them that in writing so they can
The
use
minutes
that.
will reflect what was
All right.
That we're good. We got
I
that.
think we understand that it's,
Yeah, we're
yeah. All right, so motion's been made in second with the amendment. Are there any questions, concerns, comments before we go forward? All right, all in favor, say aye. All right, motion passes.
Wow.
Next, CEO report.
I have nothing, I'm officially in vacation mode.
All right.
He is gone.
I have two things, so they're both questions. First, so there is no meeting next Tuesday.
That's correct.
All right, so everybody take next Tuesday off your schedule, no meeting. And then the second question is, I saw downstairs that you guys are doing updated these. So how does that work for us?
Yes, we can get you with HR, we do have, if you don't have one
Do any of you have one?
no.
Not a new one, I got
Okay,
an
all
old one.
I got a new.
Y'all
I
new?
didn't have an old one.
Oh, you got a new one too?
I got a new one.
Will he still work? Will he still work?
I'm working the
They still
elevator.
work, they still work, yeah.
So we did, three of us ran into some, I'm assuming that the young lady at the front desk is new. And this is her first board meeting. Okay.
Joe goes that
Oh,
way.
no, she just made us.
So what happened was we did have some visitors at the last board meeting that they didn't sign in, so we asked her to please make sure the visitors come in, but yes, she.
Yeah, so I asked specifically, I said, even if we're on the board, we have to say
He
yes.
said we have an ID, and she said you still gotta
No,
sign.
that's not correct, we'll correct that. Yeah, I'll still correct that.
No, she's like,
Yeah, I don't blame her. I mean, she covering her, she doing her job, so. All right, any other questions or comments?
Decision on this?
We'll have you at the next July meeting,
She's
I can
not
nail
here.
it, yes.
But
we
these
use
will
your
still
picture,
work to
yes.
get into.
okay, it's
Work today.
Yes, it's still
All
working.
right. So our next official meeting is the third Tuesday in July. All right,
I won't be here.
all right, meeting adjourned.
I mean, you two have to be.